What if the very pain you have been fighting, resisting, dreading, and begging to leave your body has persisted not because it is too powerful, but because you have been speaking to it wrong? Let that question reach the deepest chamber of your awareness. Let it unsettle every assumption you have carried about suffering, about struggle, about the long and weary nights when your body seemed to turn against you and no remedy, no effort, no desperate plea appeared to make any difference. What if there exists a forgotten law, a sacred principle woven into the very architecture of your mind that allows you to address the intelligence within your own flesh, within your own cells, within the silent and obedient depths of your subconscious, and to witness a response so immediate, so unmistakable, that it can only be described as divine? Tonight, you are not simply watching another video. You are stepping across a threshold. You are entering a conversation that has the power to alter the trajectory of your physical experience, to dissolve patterns of discomfort that have followed you for years, and to awaken you to a healing authority that has always lived inside you but was never properly claimed. This teaching will not ask you to deny what you feel. It will not demand blind optimism. It will hand you the key to a door that has been locked only because no one showed you where the lock was hidden. If you feel in your spirit that you were led here for a reason, that this moment is not an accident, then I ask you to do something that will anchor your intention. Press the subscribe button now and join this sacred community of seekers who are transforming their lives through the science of the inner mind. Press the like button not as a casual gesture, but as a deliberate act of faith, a signal to the universe that you are ready to receive what is being offered here. And in the comments below, write these words. Write them with conviction. I speak and my body listens. Let that declaration be your first act of alignment with the truth you are about to discover. Now settle in. Quiet every distraction. Let the world fall away. What follows is not theory. It is living law, and it has been waiting for you. There is a conversation happening inside you at this very moment that you did not initiate, that you have never consciously directed, and that has been governing the condition of your body since the day you were born. Your heart does not beat because you tell it to. Your lungs do not fill because you remind them. Your wounds do not close because you supervise the process. Something deeper, something infinitely intelligent, something that operates beyond the reach of your conscious reasoning is orchestrating the most extraordinary symphony of biological precision every second of your existence. And yet, when pain arrives, when discomfort takes root, when some persistent condition begins to dominate your daily experience, you forget this intelligence entirely. You panic, you resist, you fight, you plead, and in your desperation, you begin speaking to your body in the language of fear rather than the language of authority. This is where the error begins. Not in the body, not in the condition, but in the conversation. Let me say this plainly so that it reaches you without obstruction. Your subconscious mind, that vast and infinite reservoir of creative power that governs every involuntary function of your physical form, responds to the instructions it receives. It does not argue. It does not evaluate whether your instructions are wise or foolish, helpful or harmful. It simply accepts the dominant impression and begins to execute it with the same precision it uses to digest your food, to regulate your temperature, to repair a broken bone while you sleep. When you understand this, truly understand it, not as an intellectual curiosity but as a living, operating law, you will see that the way you speak to your pain, the way you address your body, the way you hold your condition in the theater of your mind is not a passive act. It is a creative command. Consider the words of the ancient scripture. In Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, it is written, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Notice it does not say as a man thinketh in his intellect, in his logic, in his surface reasoning. It says in his heart. The heart, in this context, is the subconscious mind, the feeling nature, the deep inner conviction that shapes the outer experience. When you think about your pain with fear, when you dwell upon your condition with anxiety, when you rehearse your suffering in the inner monologue that runs beneath your daily life, you are thinking in your heart. And what you think in your heart, you become. What you feel in your depths, you express in your body. This is not superstition. This is not wishful fantasy. This is the observable, demonstrable relationship between the inner mind and the physical organism that has been witnessed by countless individuals throughout history who had the courage to test the law and the patience to let it work. I once knew a woman named Clara, a school teacher in her late 50s who had lived with a persistent ache in her lower back for nearly 12 years. She had consulted every specialist she could afford. She had tried every remedy that was suggested. She had altered her diet, changed her mattress, adjusted her posture, and followed every exercise routine that were prescribed. And while some of these efforts brought temporary relief, the pain always returned. It became so much a part of her identity that she could not introduce herself without eventually mentioning it. "My back," she would say, as if the pain were a companion she had reluctantly agreed to live with for the rest of her days. One evening, Clara attended a small lecture on the principles of the subconscious mind. She had not come seeking healing. She had come because a friend insisted, and she did not want to be rude. But something that was said that night pierced through her resignation. The speaker made a simple statement that rearranged something inside her. He said, "You have been asking your pain to leave, but you have never once told your body what to do instead. You have focused so entirely on what you do not want that you have never given your deeper mind a clear picture of what you do want." Clara sat with those words for days. She realized that every thought she had ever directed toward her back was a thought of pain, of limitation, of frustration. She had never once closed her eyes and imagined herself bending freely, moving without restriction, waking in the morning with a body that felt light and whole. She had never spoken to her subconscious mind with the calm, quiet authority of someone who understood that it was listening and waiting for instruction. So she began. Each night before sleep, in that drowsy, receptive state when the conscious mind relaxes its grip and the subconscious opens wide, Clara would speak inwardly, not with desperation, not with pleading, but with the serene confidence of someone handing an instruction to a faithful servant. She would say quietly within herself, "Every cell in my back is renewing itself now. Comfort and ease are flowing through my spine. I move freely. I bend easily. My body knows how to restore itself, and it is doing so now." She would repeat these words gently until she drifted into sleep, allowing the feeling of ease and freedom to fill her body even as she lay still. She did not monitor the results. She did not wake each morning and test her back to see if the words had worked. She simply continued to practice with quiet faith, trusting the Lord the way a farmer trusts the soil after the seed has been planted. Within 3 weeks, Clara noticed that she had gone an entire Saturday without thinking about her back. The pain that had been her constant inner narration had grown so quiet that she had simply forgotten about it. Within 2 months, she was moving with a freedom she had not experienced in over a decade. She told me later, with tears in her eyes, that the pain had not been conquered by force. It had been replaced by a new instruction. The subconscious mind, which had been faithfully reproducing the pattern of pain because that was a dominant impression it received, simply began reproducing the new pattern, the pattern of ease, of wholeness, of restoration. Now hear me carefully. I am not telling you that Clara's experience constitutes a medical prescription. I am not suggesting that you abandon any treatment or disregard any counsel you have received from qualified professionals. What I am telling you is that there is a dimension of your experience that operates according to laws that are as real and as reliable as the law of gravity, and that when you learn to work with these laws rather than against them, many people have found that their bodies respond in ways that logic alone cannot explain. The principle at work here is a principle of impression. Your subconscious mind is not reached by argument. It is not persuaded by logic. It is reached by feeling, by repetition, by the images and emotions that you hold in your awareness during states of deep relaxation and mental stillness. This is why the moments before sleep are so sacred, so powerful, so essential to this practice. In those twilight moments, the critical faculty of the conscious mind, the part that doubts, questions, analyzes, and resists, grows quiet. The door to the subconscious swings open. And whatever you carry through that door in the form of a vivid mental picture accompanied by a deep feeling of reality becomes an instruction that the subconscious will act upon. This is not a new discovery. The psalmist understood it when he wrote in Psalm 4, verse 4, "Commune with your own heart upon your bed, and be still." Commune with your own heart. Speak to your deeper self. Give it instruction. And be still. Do not argue. Do not doubt. Do not second guess. Simply allow the impression to sink in, like water soaking into fertile soil. There was a man named Edwin, a retired engineer who came to understand this principle late in life. Edwin had developed a tremor in his right hand that made simple tasks, writing a letter, holding a cup, buttoning his shirt, sources of frustration and embarrassment. He had been told that the tremor was a natural consequence of aging, and he had accepted this verdict with the grim resignation of a man who believed that the body's decline was inevitable and irreversible. But Edwin's daughter, who had been studying the relationship between mind and body, encouraged him to try an experiment. She asked him to spend 10 minutes each night, just before sleep, imagining his hand steady and calm, not fighting the tremor, not cursing it, not analyzing it, simply seeing in his mind's eye a picture of his hand holding a pen and writing his name in smooth, flowing letters. She asked him to feel the steadiness, to let the sensation of control and calm fill his hand as he lay in that drowsy, receptive state. Edwin was skeptical, as any rational engineer would be, but he loved his daughter, and he trusted her sincerity. So he began. Each night, he would lie in bed, close his eyes, and gently hold the image of his hand moving steadily, confidently, without tremor. He would imagine writing a letter to an old friend, feeling the pen glide across the paper, sensing the smooth precision of each stroke. He did not strain. He did not force. He simply allowed the picture to fill his mind and the feeling to fill his hand. After several weeks, Edwin noticed a subtle change. The tremor, which had been present throughout the day, began to quiet in the mornings. It would return later, but the mornings were calmer. After 2 months, the periods of steadiness grew longer. After 4 months, Edwin wrote a full letter to his daughter, by hand, and the writing was legible, steady, and clear. He framed that letter and hung it on his wall, not as proof of a miracle, but as evidence of a law. The subconscious mind had received a new image, a new instruction, a new pattern. And being the faithful executor that it is, it had begun to express that pattern through the body. I share these accounts not as guarantees. Every individual is unique. Every condition has its own nature and its own history. But the principle remains constant, and those who have tested it with sincerity and patience have frequently reported experiences that transform their understanding of what is possible. Now let us go deeper into the mechanics of this law so that you may apply it with precision and confidence. The first essential element is the nature of your speech. When I say speak to your pain, I do not mean engage in a long, emotional dialogue with your discomfort. I do not mean argue with it, reason with it, or beg it to leave. What I mean is this: address your subconscious mind with a single, clear, or authoritative instruction that represents a condition you wish to experience. Speak once, with conviction, and then release the matter entirely into the hands of the deeper intelligence that knows how to execute the command. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you do not dig it up every hour to check its progress. You do not stand over the soil shouting at it to grow faster. You plant the seed, you water the ground, and you walk away with a calm expectation that nature will do what nature does. The subconscious mind operates on this same principle. It requires a clear impression, a feeling of confident expectation, and then your complete release. The moment you begin to worry, to doubt, to check for results, you are digging up the seed. You are interrupting the creative process. You are introducing a contradictory impression that cancels the original instruction. This is where so many sincere seekers fail. They learn the technique. They apply it with enthusiasm. And then, within hours, they begin the inner interrogation. Is it working? Why don't I feel different? What if it doesn't work for me? Maybe my condition is too severe. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Every one of these thoughts is a counter-instruction. Every doubt is a new seed planted alongside the original, choking its growth, diluting its power. The Master Jesus understood this perfectly when he said in Mark chapter 11, verse 24, "Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." Notice the tense of the instruction. Believe that ye receive, present tense. Not believe that you will receive someday. Not believe that you might receive if conditions are favorable. Believe that the receiving is happening now, in this moment, in the invisible realm of mind where all creation begins. This is a feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is a state of consciousness that impresses the subconscious with irresistible authority. When you speak to your pain once, you must speak from this state. You must feel the reality of the wholeness you are declaring even while the physical evidence may still suggest otherwise. This is not denial. It is not pretending. It is a deliberate act of choosing which level of reality you will invest your faith in, the temporary evidence of the senses or the eternal creative power of the mind that shapes all evidence. Let me give you another illustration that may make this clearer. There was a young musician named Sophia who developed a tightness in her throat that affected her singing voice. She had performed beautifully for years, but gradually a constriction began to appear, subtle at first, then more pronounced, until she could no longer reach the notes that had once flowed from her effortlessly. Medical examinations revealed no structural abnormality. Everything appeared normal physically. And yet the tightness persisted, growing worse with each performance, feeding on her anxiety, amplifying itself with every failed attempt to sing as she once had. Sophia was ready to abandon her career when she encountered the teaching of subconscious impression. She learned that the tightness, having no physical core that could be identified, was almost certainly a pattern held in the deeper mind, a pattern born of fear, perhaps initiated by a single moment of strain or embarrassment that a subconscious had recorded and then faithfully reproduced as a protective mechanism. The subconscious, in its attempt to protect her from further strain, had created the very limitation she feared. The solution was not to fight the tightness. It was not to push through it with willpower. It was to give the subconscious a new instruction, a new pattern, a new image to reproduce. Sophia began each night, in the moments before sleep, to imagine herself standing on stage, her throat open and relaxed, her voice pouring forth with richness and ease. She would feel the vibration in her chest, the freedom in her throat, the joy of effortless expression. She would hear the audience responding. She would feel the warmth of the stage lights. She would allow herself to inhabit that scene completely, as if it were happening in present reality. She spoke to her subconscious with calm authority. My voice is free. My throat is open. I sing with ease and power. She said it once, felt it deeply, and then released it. She did not test her voice the next morning. She did not strain to see if the tightness had lifted. She simply continued the nightly practice and went about her days with quiet expectation. The change came gradually, then suddenly, within 6 weeks, Sophia found herself humming around her apartment without thinking. The notes came easily, naturally, without the familiar catch in her throat. Within 3 months, she performed at a small venue and sang with a freedom that surpassed even her best years. She told me that the experience taught her something she would never forget. The body follows the mind. Always, without exception. The subconscious does not distinguish between a pattern of limitation and a pattern of freedom. It simply reproduces whatever impression is most deeply held. This brings us to a crucial understanding that I want you to carry with you beyond this teaching. Your subconscious mind is not your enemy. It has never been your enemy, even when it produces pain, even when it perpetuates a condition, even when it seems to work against your conscious desires. It is simply doing what it was designed to do, faithfully executing the dominant pattern it has received. If the dominant pattern is fear, it produces a physical expression of fear. If the dominant pattern is tension, it produces a physical expression of tension. If the dominant pattern is wholeness, ease, and vitality, it produces a physical expression of wholeness, ease, and vitality. The question, then, is not how do I defeat my subconscious. The question is how do I cooperate with it? How do I become a wise and deliberate director of this magnificent creative force rather than an unconscious victim of patterns I never intentionally chose? The answer is simpler than you might expect, and it begins with understanding the role of feeling. Feeling is a language of the subconscious mind. Words alone, spoken without feeling, are like letters written in invisible ink. They may be perfectly formed, but they leave no impression. When you speak to your pain, the words you use matter far less than the feeling behind them. You could use the most eloquent affirmation ever constructed, but if it is spoken with doubt, with anxiety, with a desperate hope that it might work, the subconscious receives the feeling, not the words. And the feeling of desperation is an instruction to produce more what you are desperate about. This is why I emphasize the state of calm authority. When you address your subconscious mind, you must do so from a place of quiet knowing. Not hoping, knowing, not wishing, knowing. The feeling of knowing is unmistakable. It is the same feeling you have when you know the sun will rise tomorrow. You do not hope it will rise. You do not pray for it to rise. You do not worry that it might not rise. You simply know, with a certainty so deep that it never even occurs to you to question it. This is a feeling that impresses the subconscious with creative power. This is a feeling that moves mountains. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 20, the master teacher said, "If ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, Remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you." A grain of mustard seed. not a mountain of faith, not an ocean of faith, a single grain. But that grain must be pure. It must be undiluted by doubt. It must be a concentrated point of absolute conviction, small perhaps in quantity but infinite in quality. One moment of genuine, uncontaminated faith, one moment of feeling the reality of your wholeness without any admixture of fear, is enough to set the creative law into motion. This is what I mean when I say speak to your pain once. I do not mean speak to it once and then spend the rest of the day worrying. I mean speak to it once with such completeness of feeling, with such totality of conviction, that the instruction is delivered whole and entire to the subconscious mind. And then walk away. Release it. Let it go. Trust a deeper intelligence to do its work, just as you trust your body to digest your food without your conscious supervision. There is a story I wish to share about a man named Thomas, a dock worker in a coastal town who suffered from recurring headaches that no treatment seemed to alleviate. They came without warning, sometimes mild, sometimes so severe that he could not continue his work. He lived in dread of them, and this dread, as you might already understand, was itself a creative force feeding the very pattern he feared. Thomas was not a learned man. He had not studied philosophy or psychology, but he had a simple, direct mind, and when a friend explained to him the basic principle that the subconscious reproduces whatever picture is held before it with feeling, Thomas grasped the idea immediately. He said, "So if I stop seeing myself as a man with headaches and start seeing myself as a man with a clear head, the inside of me will change the outside." His friend said yes. That was the essence of it. That night, Thomas lay in bed and did something he had never done before. He closed his eyes and imagined himself at work on the docks, the salt air on his face, the weight of the ropes in his hands, the sounds of the harbor all around him, and his head completely clear. No pressure, no pain. No anticipation of pain, just clarity and strength and ease. He felt it so vividly that he actually smiled. And in that smile, in that momentary feeling of genuine well-being, the instruction was delivered. Thomas did not analyze the experience. He did not read books about it or discuss it endlessly with friends. He simply repeated the practice each night, a brief, vivid scene of himself working with a clear head, feeling strong and comfortable, and then he fell asleep. Within a month, the headaches had diminished dramatically. Within 3 months, they had become so rare that he stopped thinking about them altogether. And when you stop thinking about something, when it no longer occupies space in your inner conversation, you have withdrawn the creative energy that sustained it. It has no fuel. It has no instruction. It fades, not because it was fought, but because it was replaced. This principle of replacement is one of the most important concepts you can grasp. You do not overcome a negative pattern by attacking it. You overcome it by installing a positive pattern so vivid, so deeply felt, so consistently impressed upon the subconscious that it displaces the old pattern entirely. Darkness is not expelled by fighting darkness. It is expelled by introducing light. Pain is not conquered by warring against pain. It is conquered by establishing the consciousness of comfort, of ease, of wholeness, and allowing the subconscious to execute this new instruction with the same faithfulness it once gave to the old. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, the Apostle Paul provides what may be the most concise instruction for mental healing ever written. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Think on these things. Fill your mind with these things. Dwell upon these things. Not upon the condition you wish to change, but upon the condition you wish to establish. Not upon the pain, but upon the wholeness. Not upon the limitation, but upon the freedom. This is not escapism. This is creative science. This is a deliberate use of the most powerful instrument in the universe, your own mind, to shape your experience according to the pattern of good. Let me now address a question that I know is forming in many minds. What about chronic conditions? What about pain that has persisted for years, perhaps decades? What about situations where the body has been given a diagnosis that seems permanent, irreversible, final? Does this principle still apply? I will answer this with great care and great honesty. The principle of subconscious impression does not recognize categories of difficulty. To the subconscious mind, there is no difference between a condition that has lasted one day and a condition that has lasted 30 years. Both are patterns. Both are impressions held in the deeper mind. Both can be replaced by a new impression if that new impression is sufficiently vivid and deeply felt. The challenge with long-standing conditions is not that they are beyond the reach of the law. The challenge is that they have become so deeply identified with a person's sense of self that the individual cannot imagine themselves without the condition. The condition has become part of their identity, part of their story, part of how they introduce themselves to the world. This is a real barrier, not physical permanence. Mental identification. When you have lived with a condition so long that you cannot picture yourself without it, you are holding continuous inner image of yourself as someone who has this condition. And that image, sustained by deep feeling, is a continuous instruction to the subconscious to maintain the pattern. To break free, you must dare to imagine a version of yourself that exists beyond the condition. You must build that image slowly, carefully, and persistently, feeding it with feeling each night before sleep, allowing it to grow in vividness and reality until it begins to feel more natural than the old image of limitation. This takes courage. It takes patience. It takes a willingness to sit with the discomfort of believing in something you cannot yet see. But as the scripture declares in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is not the denial of present circumstances. Faith is a recognition that present circumstances are not permanent, and that a deeper creative law is at work shaping new circumstances in response to the impressions you are planting in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. I want to tell you about a woman named Margaret who demonstrated this truth in a way that left a lasting impression on everyone who knew her. Margaret had lived with a heaviness in her chest for nearly 9 years. It was not related to any condition that could be precisely named, but it was real and it was constant. A weight, a tightness, a feeling of constriction that made every breath feel slightly labored. She had learned to live around it, adjusting her activities, reducing her exertions, gradually shrinking the circumference of her life to accommodate this persistent presence. When Margaret was introduced to the principle of speaking to her subconscious mind, she resisted at first. 9 years of living with a heaviness had convinced her that it was simply part of who she was. But something in the teaching stirred a memory in her, a memory of a time before the heaviness, when she would walk along the shore near her home and breathe the sea air with a feeling of absolute freedom. She had not thought of that feeling in years. It seemed to belong to a different person, a different life. Her teacher instructed her to return to that memory each night, not to fight the heaviness, not even to think about the heaviness, simply to revisit that scene on the shore, the sound of the waves, the feel of the sand, the wind on her face, and above all, the sensation of breathing freely, deeply, joyfully. To let that feeling fill her chest, to let it expand through her body, to let it become so real in her imagination that for those few minutes before sleep, she was once again that woman on the shore breathing without restriction. Margaret practiced faithfully. The first few nights, she found it difficult to hold the image. Her conscious mind kept interrupting, reminding her of the heaviness, insisting that the scene was just fantasy. But she persisted, gently returning to the shore each time her mind wandered, sinking deeper into the feeling of free breath. Gradually, the image became easier to hold. The feeling became more accessible. The conscious interference diminished as the subconscious began to absorb the new impression. After 6 weeks, Margaret noticed something extraordinary. She woke one morning and took a breath that was different, not completely free, but noticeably lighter. The heaviness had not disappeared, but it had softened. It was as if a fist that had been clenched for 9 years had begun, ever so slightly, to open. She did not celebrate prematurely. She did not analyze or test or prod. She simply continued her nightly practice with quiet gratitude. Over the following months, the lightness grew. The heaviness receded, not in dramatic bursts, but in gentle, steady waves of improvement. After 5 months, Margaret walked to the shore for the first time in years and stood where she had stood in her imagination so many nights. She breathed in the sea air, and she wept, not from sadness, from recognition. The feeling in her body matched the feeling in her imagination. The inner had become the outer. The instruction had been received and executed. I tell you this account because I want you to understand that the process is not always instantaneous. It is not a magic trick. It is a law. And like all laws, it operates according to its own timing. Your task is not to dictate the timeline. Your task is to be faithful with the impression, to maintain the feeling, to speak your word of wholeness once with conviction, and then to hold that conviction with patient, unwavering trust. The subconscious mind will respond. It must respond. It is its nature to respond. But it responds to the depth and consistency of your impression, not to your demand for speed. As you prepare to apply this teaching in your own life, remember these essential points. First, choose a time when your mind is naturally relaxed and receptive. The moments before sleep are ideal, but any state of deep relaxation will serve. Second, form a clear, vivid picture of the condition you wish to experience. Not the removal of what you don't want, but the presence of what you do want. Third, infuse that picture with feeling. Let yourself feel the reality of it in your body. Feel the ease. Feel the comfort. Feel the freedom. Fourth, speak your word once, inwardly, with calm authority and complete conviction. And fifth, release it. Let it go. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and trust a deeper intelligence to do its work. The prophet Isaiah captured the essence of this when he wrote in chapter 55, verse 11, "So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it." Your word, your conscious, feeling-filled instruction to the subconscious mind, does not return void. It accomplishes the purpose for which it was sent. But it must be sent with faith. It must be sent with feeling. And it must be sent without recall, without the anxious retraction of doubt that pulls the seed from the soil before it is time to germinate. You possess within you at this very moment an intelligence so vast, so precise, so responsive that it governs trillions of cellular processes without a single conscious thought from you. This intelligence built your body from a single cell. It knows the blueprint of your wholeness. It carries within it the pattern of perfect function that existed before any condition, any pain, any limitation appeared. Your task is not to create this intelligence. It already exists. Your task is not to earn it. It is already yours. Your task is simply to cooperate with it, to speak to it in the language it understands, the language of feeling, of imagery, of calm, confident assumption, and to allow it to restore what was always meant to be whole. Tonight, as you close your eyes, do not wrestle with your pain. Do not argue with your body. Do not plead with the universe for relief. Instead, speak once, from the depths of your being, with the authority of one who knows the law and trusts it completely. Declare your wholeness. Feel your freedom. Inhabit the reality you wish to experience. And then rest. Rest in the knowledge that a power greater than any condition, greater than any diagnosis, greater than any history of suffering is at work within you now, responding to your word, shaping your cells, restoring your body, and bringing forth the wholeness that is your divine inheritance. The teaching deepens from here, and there is much more to be shared, more understanding, more principles, more illumination that will solidify this truth in your consciousness and equip you to apply it with mastery. There is a depth to this teaching that most people never reach, not because it is hidden from them, but because they stop too soon. They learn the technique. They apply it once or twice, they experience a glimmer of change, and then they return to their old patterns of thought as naturally as water returns to the lowest point in a landscape. What I wish to share with you now goes beyond technique. It goes into the very nature of your relationship with the intelligence that sustains your body, and it will reveal to you why a single authoritative word, spoken from the right state of consciousness, carries more creative power than 10,000 repetitions spoken from a state of anxiety and doubt. There is a difference between repetition and impression. Many people confuse the two, and this confusion costs them daily. They believe that if they repeat an affirmation enough times, if they say it 100 times in the morning and 100 times at night, the sheer volume of repetition will force the subconscious to comply. But this is a misunderstanding of the law. The subconscious mind is not impressed by quantity. It is impressed by quality, by the depth of feeling, by the vividness of the image, by the degree to which you actually inhabit the state you are declaring. One single statement, spoken in a moment of genuine inner stillness, accompanied by a feeling so real that your body responds to it as if the condition already exists, will accomplish more than 1,000 mechanical repetitions spoken while the mind wanders and the heart doubts. This is why I title this teaching, Speak to Your Pain Once. Not because you will never revisit the practice. You may return to it each night as part of your pre-sleep routine. But each time you speak once, with completeness, with totality, with a feeling so saturated and whole that nothing more needs to be said. You are not bargaining. You are not negotiating. You are not building a case. You are issuing a decree from the throne of your own consciousness, and the subconscious mind, which recognizes the authority of that throne, responds. Consider the accounts in Scripture where healing was accomplished through a single word, a single command, a single moment of authoritative declaration. There was never a prolonged negotiation. There was never a series of tentative attempts. There was a word spoken with absolute authority, and the creative law responded immediately. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 13, we read, "As thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee." As you have believed, not as you have repeated, not as you have hoped, as you have believed. The belief, the deep inner conviction, the feeling of certainty, this is what determines a response. This is what moves a law into action. Now I want to take you into a dimension of understanding that will transform not only how you approach physical discomfort, but how you approach every condition of your life. The subconscious mind does not operate in isolation. It is connected to something far greater than your individual body, far greater than your personal history, far greater than the boundaries of your skin and bones. The subconscious mind is a point of contact between your individual awareness and what can only be described as infinite intelligence, the boundless, creative, sustaining presence that underlies all of existence. When you speak to your subconscious mind, you are not speaking to a limited mechanism. You are speaking into an infinite field of creative potential. The instruction you give does not rely solely on the resources currently available within your body. It draws upon a source of wisdom and power that transcends anything the conscious mind can comprehend. This is why healings occur that defy medical explanation. This is why conditions reverse that were declared irreversible. This is why the body sometimes restores itself in ways that seem miraculous. The word miracle simply means an event that exceeds the known laws of the material world. But it does not exceed the laws of mind. It is perfectly consistent with those laws. It is, in fact, the natural and inevitable result of those laws being properly applied. The psalmist expresses beautifully in Psalm 103, verses 2 through 3. "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases." Notice the word all, not some, not the minor ones, not the ones that medicine can explain. All. This is a statement of the infinite scope of the creative intelligence that operates through the subconscious mind. There is no condition too complex for it. There is no pattern too deeply ingrained. There is no limitation too old or too established. The intelligence that formed you in the womb is the same intelligence that operates through your subconscious mind right now, and it is fully capable of restoring, renewing, and rebuilding any aspect of your physical experience when it receives a clear and faith-filled instruction. I knew a man named Arthur who came to understand this truth in a way that reshaped his entire philosophy of life. Arthur was a carpenter, a quiet and practical man who had little use for abstract philosophy. He lived by the work of his hands, and he judged everything by whether it produced tangible results. When he began to experience a persistent stiffness in his knees that made it increasingly difficult to climb ladders and kneel on job sites, he approached the problem the way he approached everything, practically. He tried braces. He tried stretches. He tried the remedies his co-workers suggested. Some helped marginally. None resolved the issue. Arthur's wife, a woman of deep but quiet faith, suggested he try something she had been reading about, the practice of impressing the subconscious mind with a new image of physical well-being before sleep. Arthur was not hostile to the idea, but he was skeptical. He could not understand how thinking about something could change a physical condition. His wife, with a patient wisdom that only years of partnership can cultivate, said to him simply, "Arthur, you build houses from blueprints. The house doesn't exist when you draw the blueprint, but every detail is already determined. Your mind is the blueprint for your body. Change the blueprint, and the body follows." Something in that analogy reached Arthur in a way that no spiritual language could have. He understood blueprints. He understood that the unseen plan determined the visible structure. That night, he lay in bed and, feeling somewhat self-conscious, closed his eyes and imagined himself climbing a ladder on a job site. He felt his knees bending freely, supporting his weight without complaint. He felt the rungs beneath his boots, the rhythm of the climb, the ease and confidence of a body that worked without resistance. He held that image for a few minutes, let the feeling of easy movement settle into his limbs, and then he fell asleep. Arthur repeated this practice nightly. He did not talk about it. He did not announce it to his co-workers. He simply did it with the quiet consistency of a man who has decided to test a theory and will not abandon the test prematurely. Over the course of several weeks, the stiffness began to diminish. Not dramatically at first, a slight increase in range, a reduction in the morning reluctance of his joints to cooperate. But the trend was unmistakable. After 3 months, Arthur climbed a 20-foot ladder on a renovation project and descended without pausing, without gripping the rails for support, without the familiar wince that had become his companion. He stood at the bottom and looked up at the ladder and then looked at his wife, who had come to bring him lunch. He did not say a word. He did not need to. The blueprint had been changed. The structure had followed. I share Arthur's experience because it illustrates a truth that is essential to your success with this practice. You do not need to understand the metaphysics of the subconscious mind in order to use it effectively. You do not need to comprehend infinite intelligence intellectually in order to benefit from its power. You need only do what Arthur did. Form a clear image, infuse it with feeling, present it to the subconscious mind in a state of relaxed receptivity, and then trust the process. The law works whether you understand its mechanics or not, just as gravity works whether you understand physics or not. But for those of you who do wish to understand more deeply, let me illuminate another dimension of this practice that will increase its effectiveness dramatically. It concerns the principle of nonresistance. Most people, when they experience pain, immediately enter a state of resistance. Every fiber of their being tenses against the discomfort. They clench their jaw, they tighten their muscles, they direct mental energy toward fighting the sensation. This is a natural and understandable response. But it is counterproductive in the most profound sense. Resistance is attention. Attention is creative energy. Whatever you resist, you are giving your creative energy to. Whatever you fight, you are feeding. Whatever you push against, you are holding in place. This is a paradox that the rational mind struggles to accept, but it is observable in every dimension of human experience. The person who lies awake fighting insomnia prolongs their sleeplessness. The person who desperately fights anxiety amplifies their anxiety. The person who wages war against pain intensifies their awareness of pain. Not because the fighting is wrong in a moral sense, but because the mechanics of the mind operate according to laws that do not respond to resistance. They respond to impression. They respond to the dominant image held in consciousness. And when you resist something, you are holding that very thing at the center of your consciousness with tremendous emotional intensity, which is precisely the condition needed to impress it more deeply upon the subconscious. The principle of non-resistance asks you to do something counterintuitive but remarkably powerful. Instead of fighting the pain, acknowledge it calmly. Do not deny its presence. Do not pretend it does not exist. Simply observe it without emotional charge, the way you might observe a cloud passing across the sky. It is there. You see it, and now you turn your attention gently, deliberately, without strain, toward the image of wholeness you wish to establish. You do not push the pain away. You simply redirect your creative attention toward a new pattern. The pain, deprived of the emotional energy that sustained it, begins to lose its grip, not because it was defeated, but because it was starved. In the book of James, chapter 4, verse 7, we read, "Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Many have interpreted this as a call to fight, but the deeper meaning is precisely the opposite. The word resist in its original context implies standing firm in your own truth, not engaging in combat. You stand in the truth of your wholeness. You stand in the consciousness of your divine nature. You do not engage with the appearance of limitation, and that appearance, having no power of its own, having sustained itself only through your belief in it and your emotional engagement with it, flees. It dissolves. It loses its substance, because it never had any substance of its own. It had only the substance you gave it through your attention and your fear. I want to tell you about a woman named Irene who demonstrated the power of non-resistance in a way that was both simple and profound. Irene worked as a seamstress and had developed a burning sensation in her fingers that made her work increasingly difficult. The burning would begin shortly after she started sewing and would intensify throughout the day until by evening her hands felt as if they had been held near a flame. She dreaded the sensation, and her dread began each morning before she even touched a needle. She would wake with her hands feeling normal and immediately begin anticipating the burning, mentally bracing herself for its arrival. When Irene learned about the principle of non-resistance, she understood immediately what she had been doing wrong. She had been summoning the burning before it even arrived. Her anticipatory fear was the invitation. Her resistance throughout the day was the fuel. She was creating a self-perpetuating cycle of dread, resistance, and intensification that no amount of physical treatment could break because the cause was not physical. It was mental. It was emotional. It was rooted in the inner conversation she was having with herself about her own hands. Irene's practice was beautifully simple. Each morning, instead of bracing for the burning, she would sit quietly for 5 minutes and imagine her hands cool, comfortable, and skillful. She would picture herself sewing with ease, feeling the smooth fabric beneath her fingertips, sensing the precision of each stitch without any discomfort. She would hold this image gently, without strain, feeling the coolness and comfort as if it were already her reality. When the burning did appear during the day, she did not fight it. She simply observed it calmly, acknowledged it without fear, and gently returned her attention to the inner image of cool, comfortable hands. She did not war against the sensation. She simply declined to feed it with her emotional energy. The transformation was remarkable. Within 2 weeks, the burning arrived later in the day and with less intensity. Within a month, it appeared only intermittently and was so mild that it barely registered. Within 3 months, Irene was sewing full days without discomfort, her hands cool and steady, her work flowing with a precision that surpassed even her younger years. She had not conquered the burning through force. She had dissolved it through indifference, through the calm, deliberate withdrawal of the creative energy that had been sustaining it. This is the secret that the title of this teaching points toward. Speak to your pain once, not with the desperate urgency of someone fighting for their life, but with the quiet assurance of someone who knows the law. Speak your word of wholeness. Feel it, believe it, and then turn your attention away from the pain entirely. Do not check on it. Do not monitor it. Do not measure it. Let it exist or not exist. It no longer concerns you because your creative energy is invested elsewhere in the image of the condition you are choosing to experience. Now let me address the role of persistence, because this is where many sincere seekers stumble and fall. They apply the principle for a few days, perhaps a week, and when the condition does not vanish immediately, they conclude that the law does not work or that they are somehow excluded from its operation. This premature abandonment is the single greatest obstacle to demonstrating the power of the subconscious mind. It is the equivalent of planting a seed on Monday and digging it up on Wednesday to see why it has not yet produced fruit. The law always works. It is working right now in your body, in your circumstances, in every detail of your life. But it works according to its own timing, which is determined by factors that the conscious mind cannot fully calculate: the depth of the impression, the degree of feeling, the absence of contradictory thoughts, the accumulated momentum of previous patterns, and the infinite wisdom of the deeper intelligence that knows the most harmonious path to your good. Your task is not to set the timeline. Your task is to maintain the impression. Your task is to be faithful with the seed. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, the Apostle Paul wrote, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." In due season. Not in your demanded season. Not on your schedule. In due season. The season determined by the law itself, which always delivers a harvest of the perfect moment. Your only responsibility is to not faint, to not give up, to not allow the delay between planting and harvest to erode your faith. I once encountered a gentleman named Philip, a retired postal worker who had lived with a dull, persistent ache in his left shoulder for over 7 years. Philip had tried every approach available to him, and had gradually resigned himself to the belief that the ache was simply the price of aging. When he began the practice of pre-sleep impression, imagining his shoulder loose and free, feeling the ease of full movement, he was diligent for 2 weeks. When no noticeable change occurred, he stopped. 6 months later, having heard another account of someone who had succeeded with the practice, he tried again. This time he lasted 3 weeks before his patience gave out. He stopped again. It was not until Philip spoke with a friend who had demonstrated the principle over a period of 4 months that he understood his error. His friend said to him, "Philip, you have been planting the seed and digging it up. You plant for 2 weeks, grow impatient, and dig it up. Then you plant again for 3 weeks and dig it up again. The seed cannot grow if you will not leave it in the ground." Something in that simple truth struck Philip with the force of revelation. He resolved to commit to the practice for a full 90 days without evaluation, without testing, without checking for progress. He would simply do the work each night, imagine his shoulder free, feel the ease, speak his word of wholeness, and fall asleep, and he would not attempt to assess the results until the 90 days were complete. Philip later told me that those 90 days taught him more about faith than all the sermons he had heard in his life. The first month was difficult. His conscious mind screamed for evidence, demanded proof, insisted that he was wasting his time. But he held firm. He returned to the image each night with quiet determination. The second month was easier. The practice had become habitual, and the resistance of his conscious mind had softened. By the third month, he realized with a start that he had been reaching for objects with his left hand without hesitation, lifting bags of groceries without wincing, sleeping on his left side without discomfort, all things he had been unable to do for years. The ache had not departed in a single dramatic moment. It had faded so gradually, so naturally, that he had not noticed its leaving any more than you notice the slow brightening of dawn. One moment it was dark. Then, without any discernible instant of change, it was light. This is how the subconscious often works. Not in explosions, but in gentle, persistent, inexorable movements toward the pattern you have impressed upon it. I share Philip's story because his struggle is universal. Everyone who undertakes this practice will face the temptation to evaluate too soon, to demand evidence before the law has completed its work, to lose faith in the invisible process simply because the visible results have not yet appeared. And I want you to know, with the deepest conviction I can communicate, that the process is always working. From the first moment you impress a new image upon your subconscious mind, the creative machinery is in motion. Changes are occurring beneath the surface of your awareness, in dimensions of your being that the conscious mind cannot observe. The fact that you cannot see them does not mean they are not happening. The seed is germinating in the dark soil. The roots are forming. The stem is pushing upward. Trust the process. Trust the law. Trust the infinite intelligence that has never once failed to respond to a genuine impression held with faith. There is one more principle I wish to share with you before we close this teaching, and it is perhaps the most important of all. It is a principle of gratitude. Gratitude is not merely an emotion. It is a creative force. It is a feeling that corresponds to the state of having received. When you feel genuinely grateful, you are not in a state of wanting. You are not in a state of lacking. You are in a state of having. And the subconscious mind, which responds to your state of being rather than your words, interprets gratitude as confirmation that the desired condition has already been established. This is why gratitude accelerates manifestation. It is not a polite gesture toward the universe. It is a creative act that aligns your consciousness with the reality you are building. When you speak to your pain once and declare your wholeness, follow that declaration with a feeling of gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain. Not gratitude that you are suffering. Gratitude that the healing intelligence within you has received your instruction and is now carrying it out. Gratitude that the creative law is operating on your behalf. Gratitude that you are connected to an infinite source of wisdom and restoration that never sleeps, never falters, and never fails. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, we read, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." In everything give thanks, not in the pleasant things only. In everything, because gratitude, even in the midst of difficulty, is a declaration that you trust the deeper process, that you believe in the unseen movement of good, that you know, not hope, but know, that the outcome is certain and the law is faithful. Let me tell you about one final individual whose experience embodies everything we have discussed. Her name was Rosalind, and she was a librarian who had lived with a persistent tension in her neck and across her shoulders that had slowly intensified over a period of about 5 years. The tension had begun during a period of great personal stress and had remained long after the stressful circumstances had resolved. It was as if her body had memorized the stress and continued to reproduce it even when there was no longer any external cause. Rosalind discovered the teaching of subconscious impression and began to practice it with a discipline and gentleness that were perfectly balanced. Each evening, she would prepare for sleep by sitting quietly at the edge of her bed for 5 minutes. She would close her eyes and imagine herself standing in a warm rain. She could feel the water cascading over her neck and shoulders, warm and soothing, dissolving the tension the way water dissolves salt. She would feel her muscles softening, releasing, letting go. She would feel her shoulders dropping away from her ears, her neck lengthening, her entire upper body becoming loose and free. She would breathe slowly and deeply, feeling the warmth spreading through her body, feeling the ease and comfort saturating every fiber. Then she would speak her word. quietly, once. My body is at peace. Every muscle is relaxed. I am whole. I am well. I am free. She would feel the truth of those words, not as something she was trying to create, but as something she was recognizing, as if the wholeness had always been there and she was simply acknowledging it. And then she would lie down, carry that feeling of warm, liquid relaxation into sleep, and release the matter entirely. But Rosalind added something that elevated her practice to another level. Before she fell asleep, she would say silently, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, not as a formal prayer, simply as a feeling, a deep, warm, expansive feeling of gratitude that rose from her center and filled her entire being. Thank you that the intelligence within me knows how to restore my body. Thank you that the Lord is faithful. Thank you that I am whole. She would fall asleep in that feeling of gratitude, and it would be the last impression received by her subconscious mind before the deep creative work of sleep began. Rosalind's results were among the most rapid I have ever witnessed. Within 10 days, she noticed a marked softening in the tension. Within a month, she could turn her head freely in all directions without the familiar pulling sensation. Within 2 months, the tension had dissolved so completely that she sometimes forgot it had ever existed. She told me that the gratitude was a key, that when she added that feeling of thankfulness to her practice, everything shifted. The gratitude, she said, made the wholeness feel real. It took the practice from something she was doing to something she was living. It collapsed the distance between the wish and its fulfillment and created a state of consciousness in which the healing was not something she was waiting for but something she was already experiencing. This is a supreme teaching. This is a secret within the secret. When you can feel grateful for your wholeness before your body has confirmed it, you have mastered the law. You have entered the state of consciousness from which all creation flows. You have aligned yourself with the infinite intelligence that sustains all life, and you have given it an instruction so pure, so complete, so saturated with faith that the response is inevitable. As we draw this teaching to its close, I want you to sit with the fullness of what you have received. You have learned that your subconscious mind is a faithful servant that responds to the dominant impression held in your consciousness. You have learned that pain, discomfort, and persistent physical patterns are not permanent realities but impressions that can be replaced by new patterns of wholeness. You have learned that the way to speak to your pain is not through resistance, not through desperation, not through endless repetition, but through a single, authoritative, feeling-filled declaration followed by complete release and trust. You have learned that the pre-sleep state is a gateway through which impressions reach the subconscious with maximum power. You have learned that nonresistance, the calm refusal to feed a condition with your emotional energy, is one of the most potent healing forces available to you. You have learned that persistence and patience are not optional but essential, and that the law operates in due season according to a wisdom that exceeds your conscious understanding. And you have learned that gratitude is a crown of the practice, the feeling that seals the impression and accelerates the creative process. Carry these truths with you, not as intellectual knowledge, but as living convictions. Let them sink below the surface of your reasoning mind and take root in the deep soil of your subconscious where all real change begins. You are not a helpless victim of your body's conditions. You are the director of a creative intelligence that built your body from nothing and sustains it every moment of every day. That intelligence is not distant from you. It is not separate from you. It is you, the deeper, truer, more essential you that exists beneath the surface personality and the temporary conditions of the flesh. In Luke chapter 17, verse 21, the master teacher declared, "The kingdom of God is within you, not above you, not beyond you, not in some distant heaven that you must earn your way into. Within you, right now, right here, in this very moment. The kingdom, the reign of divine order, harmony, health, and abundance is within the depths of your own consciousness, waiting to be recognized, claimed, and expressed. You have the power to speak to your pain once and watch it lose its hold on your life. Not because you are special in a way that others are not, but because you are connected to the same infinite intelligence that every human being is connected to. The difference between those who demonstrate the law and those who do not is simply this. Those who demonstrate it have learned to use it. They have learned to speak the language of the subconscious. They have learned to impress new patterns with faith and feeling. They have learned to release their word into the creative depths and trust the response. This is not a gift reserved for the few. It is a birthright available to all, and it is available to you tonight. As you close your eyes this evening and prepare to cross the threshold into sleep, remember that you are entering the most creative moment of your day. The impressions you carry into sleep are the seeds that will blossom into tomorrow's experience. Choose those seeds with care. Choose wholeness. Choose ease. Choose freedom. Choose vitality. Speak your word once, with the calm authority of one who knows the law and trusts it completely. Feel the reality of what you have declared. Let gratitude rise within you like a warm tide. And then rest. Rest in the infinite arms of the intelligence that has sustained you since before you drew your first breath and will sustain you long after the last condition of limitation has dissolved from your experience. You are more powerful than any pain. You are more enduring than any condition. You are more real than any symptom. You are the living expression of infinite intelligence, and within you lies the authority to speak, to declare, to feel, and to witness the faithful response of a subconscious mind that has always been listening, has always been ready, and has always been waiting for you to claim your rightful place as a conscious director of your own magnificent life. I want to leave you with one final thought from Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still, and know that I am God. Be still. Stop fighting. Stop struggling. Stop fearing. Be still. And in that stillness, know, not hope, not wish. Know that within you resides a presence, a power, an intelligence that is divine in its nature, infinite in its capacity, and utterly faithful in its response to the impressions of your believing heart. Go now in peace. Go in confidence. Go in the quiet, unshakable certainty that the law you have learned tonight is real, that it operates with mathematical precision, and that it is responding to your word even as you hear these final sentences. Your wholeness is not a distant destination. It is your present reality, waiting only for your recognition to become visible in your flesh, in your experience, in every dimension of your precious and sacred life. These teachings are being shared with you for educational and inspirational purposes, drawn from the timeless and universal principles of subconscious mind science that belong to all humanity. They represent original reflections on the general philosophy of mental and spiritual well-being that countless thinkers, teachers, and seekers have explored throughout the ages. They are not intended to replace professional medical guidance or any form of qualified care, but to complement your journey with the inner dimension of wisdom that has always been available to those who seek it. Apply what resonates with your own understanding. Take inspired action in your own life. Trust your judgment, honor your path, and know that the greatest authority on your experience will always be the still, quiet voice within your own heart. May that voice guide you. May it comfort you. May it lead you into the wholeness, the abundance, and the radiant peace that are your divine inheritance now and forevermore.